Iran rises, Israel crashes, Balochistan, facts, not fiction. And will Trump like the new man at 10 Downing Street?
We will never let you down. And as they say, that true brotherhood doesn't have any question to answer.
We will never let you down, brother. Those were the words of the Prime Minister of Pakistan to the Iranian president. And then, seeing him off, the Field Marshal, General Assamani, not only gifted him an album with memories from his visit, but also said,
Thank you very much. See you again. Thank you.
see you again. And that's the tone for the future. The Iranians looked relaxed and said it loud and clear for all the naysayers to hear that they had complete trust in Pakistan. On the nuclear, the Iranian president corrected a slip-up by the interpreter when he said,
Excellency, I would like to confirm one fact, that our missile program was not included in the MOU, as you said, and it shall not be included in the MOU. I would like to say that if it was not for Iran's missile capabilities, our country would have been plundered and destroyed and plowed by the US regime and the Zionist regime, like what the Israelis did in Gaza. So these countries, they claim that they respect the human rights. This is a big lie. We shall never compromise on our nuclear capabilities and equipments. And I'm sorry, my apologies.
Nuclear capacity instead of saying ballistic. A clear commitment and a slapback at those who keep harping on about Iran posing a nuclear threat. Pakistan endorsed the right of the Iranians for a ballistic missile defense capacity. And this morning, the oil prices were down to pre-war prices. WTI at $72.50 and Brent at $76 a barrel. But something else came tumbling down. The hopes of Israel expansion, as well as their currency. The shekel weakening against the dollar, and the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange bleeding this morning. Oil was flowing freely in the Strait of Hormuz, with ships sailing coast to coast and world leaders flying from capital to capital. Rubio was shuttling between Kuwait, Bahrain and the UAE. Pakistanis and the Iranians will be off to Riyadh soon. Libyan Deputy Commander of the Armed Forces, Saddam Khalifa Haftar, was in Rawalpindi, GHQ, meeting the Field Marshal Asim Munir. So it's all happening, but at a time of huge possibilities for Pakistan and Balochistan, the same elements who have never wanted this resource-rich province to flourish or the Pak China-Iran trade to take off are at work again. This time, using foreign voices who have nothing to do with the region. So yesterday, I came across a video, which I was convinced was AI generated. But after checking it, I found out that it was an actual video by Greta Thunberg. She's now 23 and she's shot to fame for raising environmental issues and bunking school. Now, this video makes it abundantly clear why skipping lessons is a bad idea. So we hear that Greta has been protesting about this and that. And there are the critics, there are the accusations of activism for attention or motivated by an aspiration for a future political career, which I think are all fine. But when one picks up every issue without knowledge about the ground realities or hard facts, one can look very compromised. Now, yesterday's video came up on my timeline because this is an area of my interest. But the video made me think, what else is Greta saying which is not factually correct? So the story is from a region I have ethnic roots in and have been covering the area since 2012, and I am no lounge journalist. So I'm one of the few individuals who has traveled across Balochistan without security arrangements for years. The first time was during the 2013 elections. I was having to duck from rockets on roads, and one actually landed outside the window of my room. I have traveled to the Iranian borders, like the locals and with the locals, both from Quetta to Taftan and from Karachi to Sistan-Balochistan border. Why am I giving you this background? Because when I report back on anything, I have geographic, historic and a personal experience informing my reporting or even analysis. Greta and others do not. Proof is in the video she posted. Watch it here.
Yesterday, an anti-terrorism court in Pakistan sentenced Dr. Mahram Baloch and a few other activists to life imprisonment. Occupied territory by Pakistan. Occupied territory by Pakistan. Free Mahrang and free Balochistan.
Regurgitating a script with an agenda, but she should have checked it for herself for accuracy. Occupied territory? So let me educate you and those who watch you, as a following in millions adds on the burden of responsibility of being accurate and always factually correct. So Pakistan has 4 provinces. The largest by size is Balochistan. However, it is sparsely populated. There are people from many ethnicities living here, predominantly the Pashtuns and Baloch. Towards the Iranian borders, there are more Baloch-dominated areas as compared to the densely populated capital city of Balochistan, Quetta. And these are not new settlers in Balochistan. Many, like my own family, traces its roots to Afghans settling here long before Pakistan was made. Pashtuns regard the Kohi-Suleiman area as the origin and resting place of a legendary figure in Pashtun folklore, widely believed to be the father of Pashtuns. So Pashtun settlements towards Quetta and Iranian settlements towards the borders. Now, post-independence, Balochistan voluntarily joined the Muslim separate state created in 1947. On the 29th of June 1947, Balochistan's Shahi Jirga, a grand council of tribal leaders and the non-official members of the Quetta municipality voted unanimously to join Pakistan. Now, the Jirga did not include the princely state of Kalat, so they were consulted, and the Khan of Kalat agreed to join Pakistan. On the 27th of March 1948, after lengthy negotiations with Jinnah, the founding father and the first Governor General of Pakistan. Now, Jinnah and the Khan had a long-standing professional association and a friendship. Jinnah had been the Khan's legal counsel. And then, for the struggling young state of Pakistan, who helped with the finances, the Khan of Kalat gifted an impressive sum to Jinnah. Pakistan has not invaded Balochistan and is not an occupying force. There is a legislative assembly and a chief minister who is ethnically Baloch. There have been, of course, insurgencies in Balochistan on and off, but on a very small and rather fragmented scale. Many of those who call for a separate state do not actually live here. The state has dealt with separatist movements in perhaps an inconsistent fashion, largely because it hasn't been a huge issue and usually centers around tribal chiefs and their personal family dynastic and financial interests. For those who have traveled to Balochistan, the lack of industry, jobs, as well as health facilities stands out. But for Greta, it would be of interest that the coastline and the air is squeaky clean because of that lack of infrastructure. Since the CPEC and plans to develop Gwadar port, the rise in proxy wars and terrorist attacks has not only turned investors away, but also killed civilians in the thousands. The problem with sit-ins and divisive politics is that the state cannot develop the province. Compare that to Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, for example, where there are motorways and industrial zones completed under the CPEC. Now to the point of the actual sentence of Maharang Baloch. Is it fair? Is it flawed? An incarceration of any individual by a court of the land might not be welcomed by supporters, but it is a judicial process and judgments can be appealed against. It's not a covert process. Families and friends obviously can be upset and claim that the individuals sentenced are innocent. I can quote many a sentence where innocent Pakistanis have been held in places like Guantanamo Bay, for example. In fact, two Pakistanis, two brothers, Abdul and Muhammad Rabbani, were held by the United States of America for 2 decades and then released in 2023 without charges. That's in the free world, in countries with democracy and freedoms. And there are trials without a transparent judicial process or perhaps flawed judgments. In some cases, years later, these sentences are corrected. For example, Peter Sullivan. He was in prison in the UK for 40 years for a murder he did not commit. My advice to Greta is to focus more on the new law in Sweden, which she hasn't really commented on. Perhaps it hasn't been researched also, and perhaps she doesn't have time. I've even researched Swedish language sources and I can't find a direct quote where Greta Thunberg names this specific law, proposed last year and passed 9th of June 2026. I could only find generic comments about teenage deportations and the increasingly racist immigration policy of Sweden. Sweden's parliament voted on the 9th of June 2026 to scrap permanent residence permits as an option for refugees, people with subsidiary protection, resettled refugees, long-term residents and people on humanitarian grounds. From July the 12th, these groups get 5-year renewable permits instead of indefinitely. Now, the change is part of efforts to adapt Sweden's regulatory framework for granting international protection and asylum procedures to the minimum guarantees that are set out in the EU law, with the aim of creating better conditions for integration and reducing asylum-related immigration. That's what the government says. But the criticisms from human rights and refugee groups. Well, the critics argue that reducing access to permanent status creates long-term uncertainty, weakens integration, and leaves people in prolonged limbo, even after being recognized as needing protection. And the UNHCR has flagged concerns about earlier versions of this proposal. Legal scholars have questioned whether the real aim is less about pushing people towards citizenship and integration and more about destabilizing the legal status of refugees and others in need of protection, since citizenship requirements are simultaneously being tightened, including financial self-sufficiency and language rules. Now, many Afghans and Somalis with permanent residence can't even meet the verified identity requirements for citizenship. Whereas in Pakistan, Pakistan has absorbed 300 million Afghan refugees following the Soviet Union war. So perhaps Greta needs to focus more on voicing her concerns about human rights and freedoms and protecting the most vulnerable of communities back home in Sweden. And of course, she's always welcome to come to Pakistan. And I'll personally take her to Balochistan for her to see. Now, Trump didn't really like Sir Keir Starmer, but what about the new guy in 10 Downing Street? So let's talk about Burnham. He's generally read as to the left of Starmer, though he's hard to pin to a faction. He served in Corbyn's shadow cabinet, and that was very early on. But becoming the mayor of Greater Manchester in 2017 let him sidestep the Labour's internal civil war between the Corbynites and Starmer's centrists. Now, much of Labour's left flank despises Starmer for moving the party to the centre and pushing Corbyn out. But Burnham isn't tied to that fight, which is very convenient. He's been described as charting a new, practical progressivism, distinct from both all left Corbynites and neoliberal Blairites. Pro-public ownership, anti-austerity, but not deficit spending heavy. He's pushed nationalising the railways, a universal graduate tax instead of tuition fees, a national care service folded into the National Health Service, a new social care levy, and extending the higher minimum wage to under 25s, and banning zero-hour contracts. Notably, he called Ed Miliband's mansion tax the politics of envy. So, he's not uniformly left-wing, more populist, pragmatic, with a strong public ownership streak. Manchester record. As three-term mayor from 2017 to 2026, he's turned Manchester into a national economic success story, the only English city growing faster than London at 3 times the national rate. He renationalised Greater Manchester's bus system, expanded the light rail and cut fares, earning comparisons to Zohran Mamdani-style retail politics. He also oversaw a major home building push and built a reputation for standing up to Westminster, which got him the nickname of King of the North. Burnham won the Makefield in northeast England decisively, defeating Rob Kenyon of Reform UK, a seat Reform had actually been outperforming Labour in locally. The sitting MP, Josh Simons, resigned specifically to trigger the vote and clear Burnham's path back to Parliament. He won by roughly 20 points, which made a leadership challenge unstoppable. Starmer announced on June 22nd he'd stand down as PM, and Burnham was sworn in as MP the very same day. Now that's checkmate.